Bolt fam, welcome back to another episode of the Electric Edge podcast. Thanks for tuning in as always. And in this episode, we are going to go through Monday night's matchup against the Eagles at home at SoFi. Both teams coming into the game are 8-4 in the year. The Eagles are on a 2-game skid right now, which I think is going to play into the outcome of that game. We're going to go through the matchup. We're going to go through the keys to the game for the Chargers to get a win on Monday night. Talk about the injuries, including Justin Herbert's hand surgery, which he had on Monday, and then also talk about playoff implications from the outcome of this game. So if you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe to Electric Edge Podcast on YouTube. You can also listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also follow me on socials. I am at Electric Edge Pod. Just to note, I will be at the game Monday night as well. I do plan on vlogging my entire day, so be sure to check that out. Check out the vlog from Sunday's game against the Raiders, which is up on YouTube, if you want to see my journey to SoFi on game days. So with that being said, got a lot to go through in this episode, a lot to talk about, especially with Herbert's injury, how the Eagles are coming into this game on a skid. We're going to talk through all of that right now in this episode. All right, so like I mentioned, both teams coming into this game on Monday night are 8-4 on the year. The Eagles right now are leading the NFC East. They have dropped 2 games back-to-back. They lost against the Cowboys, and then on Black Friday, they lost at home against the Bears. Some things we'll talk about from that Bears game that I think the Chargers can exploit on Monday night. The Chargers coming off a win at home against the Raiders, probably one of their better games on the year. Do have to factor in that it's against a bad opponent, but a lot of good things to take away from that game. But I do want to start off with Herbert's injury because that is the key piece to the Chargers' success going forward this year. So Herbert did have surgery on his hand. He had it Monday afternoon, I believe. From what I had read, they put some plate and screws in the top of his hand, in his left hand, so won't affect anything throwing. He was at practice yesterday, which was Thursday, so there were some videos circulating on Chargers Twitter, along with some of the beat writers like Chris Ream and Daniel Popper. They were posting some videos of Herbert taking snaps and throwing the ball. He was not taking any snaps under center yesterday. He was limited in practice based on the injury report. Throwing the ball, he looked good. He looked a little uncomfortable, in my opinion, holding the ball, but I think it's his first time in a practice situation post-surgery, so it's good the Chargers do have an extra day this week to prepare for Monday night, so I'm hoping he becomes a little more comfortable, has less pain going into Monday night. The big thing with the hand injury is bracing falls, so the game plan going into Monday night, a lot of quick passes, really rely on the run game like we did against the Raiders. That's going to limit the pressure and the amount of hits Herbert's going to take, to keep him in a good position, keep him upright, and not letting that hand get any worse than it currently is. But, Herbert had mentioned that if doctors say he could play, he's going to play. He said the only way he's not going to play if doctors advise him not to. And we know how tough he is. We've seen him play through rib injuries. We saw him a couple years ago with the same type of finger injuries he had, where he had that finger stuck in Max Crosby's mask, but eventually had to go out for the rest of the year. But he's tough. He played for the ankle injuries last year. He knows how important this stretch of games are for the Chargers. It's a very competitive AFC right now, and we'll talk about that playoff race towards the end of this episode. But, regardless if he has one hand, he gives the Chargers the best chance to win. So he knows what's at stake. It's another primetime game for the Chargers. This year, the Chargers are 4-0 in primetime games. They could go 5-0 if they take care of business on Monday, but going to be a tall task against the Eagles, defending Super Bowl champions. They have not looked as dominant as they did last year, and we'll talk about some of the numbers here in a little bit. But I think them being on a 2-game skid, the offense for them not clicking, the run game hasn't really been consistent. They have some key injuries on the offensive and defensive line and also in that secondary. So I think the Chargers do have a good chance to make some noise Monday night and put it to the Eagles and potentially come out of there with a win. All right, so let's take a look at the current matchup that ESPN has. Like I said, Eagles coming in 8-4. They're 4-2 away. The Chargers are also 8-4. They're 5-2 at home. Those 2 losses coming from the Colts game and the Commanders game. Right now, ESPN Analytics has the Eagles at a 58.5% chance of winning Monday night. I think it's going to be a little closer than that. think right now the spread on this game is about 2.5. It opened at 1.5. I think that spread's going to change based on how Herbert practices the rest of this week. Hurts on the year has just over 2,500 passing yards. Herbert's at 2,842. Rushing, Saquon has not had the year he had last year by any stretch. And I do want to go through some of his rushing numbers in their losing efforts on the year. So he's at 740 on the year. Kamani Vidal is at 543. And just on that note, Marion Hampton was limited again at practice yesterday. He still is in the non-contact jersey, so that is something to keep an eye out for. I think the Chargers, if they don't think he's 100%, I think the Chargers will not play him. I think they don't want to be in another situation where they bring someone back like Alt gets hurt and he's done for the year. I think they know he's a key piece with this tough gauntlet of a schedule. So he's only going to play, I believe, if he's 100%. So we may see Vidal as that RB1 once again on Monday night. Receiving on the year, Devonta Smith is leading the Eagles with 802. McConkey is leading the Chargers with 683. Sack leaders, Ojomo for the Eagles is at 4. Tooley for us is at 10. And then leader in tackle, Zach Baum is at 96, which he's questionable for Monday night. I believe he has a hand injury. And like I said, we'll go with the injury report a little bit later in this episode. And Deion Henley is at 75 for the Chargers. So this is the Eagles schedule for this year. And I wanted to highlight a few things that I was going through preparing for this episode. So if you take a look at the Eagles' losses, they lost to Denver, which they were up in that game big. They blew a lead. They lost to the Giants. That was in the Meadowlands. That was on a Thursday night. Then they lost back-to-back games between Dallas and Chicago. So take a look at the rushing numbers for those two losses. Saquon against Denver had 30 yards rushing, and that was the rushing leader. Against the Giants, he had 58 yards. The Dallas game, Hurts was the leading rusher with 33 yards. And the Chicago game, Saquon was at 56 yards. So it's going to be imperative for the Chargers defense. The run defense looked really good last week against the Raiders. It's going to be imperative for them to contain the run once again. And the odds are in your favor if you can keep Saquon under that 70-yard rushing mark on Monday night. But I do want to bring up some team stats here real quick. So offensively, the Chargers come into this game 10th in the NFL with 346 yards per game. The Eagles come into this game averaging just above 300 yards a game. Passing, they're at 196, and rushing is about 108. So the Chargers definitely have the offensive advantage there. On the defensive side of the ball, same deal. The Chargers are ranked 3rd in the NFL right now. They're giving up 275 yards a game. Passing's 168, rushing's 106. So that rushing is in line with what the Eagles are doing, and definitely giving up fewer passing yards than the Eagles are putting up. As far as the Eagles defense, they're towards the bottom of the league. They're giving up 347 total offensive yards, 218 in the air, 128 on the ground. So that definitely does favor the Chargers running the ball hard again Monday night, especially if Herbert is a bit limited. Just to add that there is some talk of potentially using Trey Lance in some situations, especially if Herbert can't take snaps under center. Greg Roman and Harbaugh need to get creative, because if you have Lance in the game, the thinking is on the defensive side of the ball that they're going to run. And got to be creative, got to catch the defense off guard, and make things happen if Trey Lance does have to go into the game. So the Chargers this season so far, they're averaging about 22 points a game. They've been very efficient passing to 7.1 yards per attempt, and 4.5 yards on the ground. They're 45% this year on converting on third downs, which is very good. And they've averaged about 32 minutes time possession per game, which I think is going to be critical in Monday night's matchup, keeping Hurts in that offense off the field and putting pressure on a defense for the Eagles that is banged up. They lost their starting safety, Makuba, I think a couple weeks ago. Zach Baum is injured. Jalen Carter is not playing Monday night, which is huge for that defensive line for the Eagles. So hopefully, with Jalen Carter not playing, that helps this run offense for the Chargers get things going and get them going early. Eagles offense has been a little bit more efficient this year. They're averaging about 22.5 points per game, just a little bit more than the Chargers. Their third down rate is 34%. They rely a lot on explosive plays down the field. If you watch some of the Eagles games, Hurts is looking for A.J. Brown. Now, there's been a lot of storylines about A.J. Brown, but last game against the Bears, he had a very good game. That's going to be target number 1 for Jalen Hurts on Monday night. On the run, they're averaging about 4 yards a carry, and like I mentioned before, 108 yards rushing per game. So the defensive advantage should fall to the Chargers, but we're 0-2 this year against NFC East opponents. So let's hope we could change that Monday night. Let's switch over real quick to some PFF stats because I do want to touch on the matchup here. Okay, so PFF has the Eagles ranked 11th overall. The Chargers are at 12th, so very even. Defensively, they have the Eagles ranked 8th. The Chargers are ranked 10th. Offensively, the Eagles are ranked 12th, and the Chargers are ranked 13th. So like I said, very, very even, very balanced. They also have the spread right now at 2.5. A lot of people are taking the Chargers at 2.5. I think that's a good bet. Quarterback comparison, the PFF grade for Herbert right now is 84.6 compared to Hurts at 81.3. Their power rating rank, Herbert's at 4th and Hurts is at 10th. What I do want to show is the lineup for Monday night. Now, Harbaugh did talk about Salyer being the left tackle going forward, which I think is what it should have been a couple weeks back now. I've heard some conflicting reports just reading through things on X that Salyer was banged up going back to the Tennessee game, which could have played a factor into him not starting at left tackle, but he looked very, very good at left tackle on Sunday. So he will be the starter at left tackle going forward. And it sucks that the Chargers burned 2 draft picks this year trying to figure out who was going to be either a backup swing tackle or fill in for Alt when he went down. And you had the answer all along on your bench. What's also amazing to me is that this starting offensive line, Salyer is the second highest graded player. Now he's rated here as a guard, but still, the best side of your line right now is the left side. And your second highest player was a guy you had sitting on the bench trying to play him at right guard. But Harbaugh did take accountability. And, it is what it is at this point. Let's just hope that this is the solution going forward and that this can be the starting offensive line going forward. The Chargers had 19 different offensive line combinations so far this year. So it'd be nice to get some consistency and solidify the starting 5 offensive linemen going forward into this gauntlet of games. There's been a lot of talk this week, too, about Bozen. He graded very high against the Raiders, and I'll take that. That's great. I take it with a grain of salt, though. You're playing against a very bad defense. I want to see that same type performance against a good defense. They're going to go against Monday night. He's still ranked 37th out of 37 centers. So, you got to repeat that performance if you want people to change the opinions of you. I've talked too much about Becton at this point. He's been a big disappointment, but, I can only hope that he stays healthy the rest of the way, and hopefully some consistency on this offensive line does help him in this gauntlet. But just take a look at the Eagles' defensive line. I mean, their defensive line is very good. Their players are graded very highly. They acquired Jalen Phillips a couple weeks ago from Miami. They have Cooper DeJean. Mitchell's their other corner. Like I said, Zach Baum, he's on the injury report this week. Dory Jackson has been the one corner you can exploit, but the Chargers offensive line once again this week is going to have a tall task, and it's going to even be amplified even more based on Herbert's hand injury. So can this offensive line have a repeat performance of last week's performance with the Raiders against a much better defense? That will be the key, and we'll talk about the actual keys to the game here in a little bit. So let's switch to the opposite side. So let's have the Eagles offense versus the Chargers defense. Now, I'm not a believer in Jalen Hurts. I think he is a product of that Eagles offense. He plays behind a top 5 offensive line year after year. He has 2 number 1 wide receivers. He had the best running back in football last year. I just think he's a product of that offense. If Herbert played behind this type of line, they probably lose 1 game all year. But I know there's also some injuries on their offensive line, which we'll talk about. But I think the Chargers defense matches up very good against this Eagles offense. And like I said, Hurts is going to look to A.J. Brown. You got to worry about Devonta Smith in the deep ball. And then, you need to stop Saquon. Saquon has had a couple games this year. I think it's 2 games over 100 yards. Got to stop the run. Did a great job last week against J&T stopping the run. Got to repeat that performance. This time, get him into long 3rd down situations since they're converting only 35% in the year and force him to punt. Having that same type of game plan like we did against the Raiders. 3 and out, get the ball back, run the ball, milk the clock, throw when you need to, put up points. And against a team like the Eagles, the Chargers cannot settle for field goals. No turnovers in the red zone. Super important. Last week Herbert had that bad pick in the end zone. They didn't convert on 4th and 1. Got to do a better job against a high caliber team like this Monday night, or else it's going to be a long game for the Chargers. Bolt fam, want to get in on the action on game day? Prize Picks is the easiest way to play fantasy style picks. No leagues, no drafts. Just pick more or less on your favorite player stats and you're live. New users get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 using code ELECEDGE, ELECEDGE. Quick, fun, and perfect for game day. Sign up today with Prize Picks. All right, let's talk about some key matchup and keys to the game for the Chargers Monday night. So I think it's the Chargers run game against that Eagles defense and defensive line. They need to find a way to recreate their performance last week against the Raiders. Now, like I said, much better defense this week. The Eagles are missing Jalen Carter. They really got to exploit similarly to what the Bears did against the Eagles on that Black Friday game. If they could do that, milk the clock, put points up on the board, they're going to be in a very good position to win Monday night. Another key is stopping the passing game for the Eagles. So I think the Chargers, and I've talked about this all year, the Chargers secondary has played very well this year. I think it's going to be a great matchup for the Chargers. The Eagles are, like I said, only averaging 196 passing yards a game. I think the Chargers, give up they give up 168 passing yards a game. So that favors them. Force the Eagles to try and run the ball. If the run defense plays in any capacity like they did last week, it's going to be a good day for the Chargers Monday night. Just back on the run game, the Bears rushed for 281 yards against that Eagles defense. And they really exploited the edges. So you're going to see probably a lot of Trey Harris, Tucker Fisk, Scott Matlock being those extra blockers on the edge to get Vidal into space. And Patterson or maybe Hampton. Like I said, we don't know if he's going to play, but he was limited Monday night. So I think if you can give the ball to running backs 30 plus times Monday night, you're going to be in a very good position to get a W and go 9-4 on the year. Like I said, I wouldn't rely too much that Hampton's going to play, but if Vidal and Patterson can repeat that performance, it's going to be a good night for the Chargers. Another key to the game, and I briefly touched on this, is protecting Herbert. Right, he has surgically repaired hand. The offensive line has come off one of their better performances of the year, and I think that bye week definitely got some guys healthy. So keeping him upright. I think they only gave up 3 sacks last week against the Raiders. Once again, much better defense they're going up against, but it has to be the quick passes, the RPOs, maybe with Lance. Get the ball out quickly so Herbert doesn't have to sit in the pocket and take unnecessary hits and have to figure out other ways to brace himself with that bad left hand. I think that's key. And you got to keep Herbert healthy for the last 5 games of the year. So have a similar game plan like last week. I always talk about that Miami game. I thought that game plan was great. Same deal. Quick passes, run the ball, keep Herbert upright, and you're going to be in a good position to win Monday night. Yeah, I think the other thing which I also touched on is getting the Eagles into 3rd and long situations. They've had a hard time this year converting on 3rd down. So the Chargers defense needs to play some disciplined zone coverage and getting them into 3rd and at least 6 yards where they can get some pressure on Hurts, make him throw it away or try and scramble. Never get into those tush-push kind of situations to convert. Also just protecting against the deep shots. Like I said, I think the secondary this year for the Chargers played very well. You got to keep an eye on Devonta Smith being that deep guy. Also, A.J. Brown too, but Hurts is going to look for A.J. Brown for more of those contested balls. So if you can take care of those 2 guys, force pressure on Hurts, get him in 3rd and long, defense is going to have a very good day on Monday. I talked about this before. You're in the red zone. You have to find ways to put up 7. Stop settling for field goals, especially against teams that have winning records. Right? They're going to come back. They're going to find ways to score. Have to be cleaner in the red zone. No picks, no fumbles. The play calling needs to be better in the red zone too. No 4th and 1s in shotgun like we saw last week. And I think that'll get cleaned up. And I also think they may use Lance in those type of situations if Herbert can't take a snap under center. Just be more efficient this week in the red zone. They played great this year in primetime games. So hopefully that continues Monday night and the Chargers can take care of business, go to 9-4 in the year, improve their playoff odds, and then roll into the next week, which is against Kansas City, in Kansas City. Okay, let's pull up the injury report from yesterday. All right, so much longer injury report than we saw going into the Raiders games. Bud Dupree is on here just for rest. Tucker Fisk has an ankle injury. He did not practice. Like I said, Hampton was limited with his ankle. Sean Hand did not practice with an illness. Don Haskins, his window got opened up, so he did practice yesterday. He's limited with that hamstring. Herbert was limited to practice yesterday. Quentin Johnson, he had on the yellow non-contact jersey, so he was limited with the shoulder. 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭, he did practice full with an elbow. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐜 was limited with a back, and 𝐬𝐭 was limited with the shoulder. Hopefully those two guys play, especially 𝐬𝐭. I think he will. He wasn't in a yellow jersey from what I saw, so he should be okay for Monday night. Let's take a look at the Eagles. Like I said, Zach Bond, he was limited with a hand injury, so he's questionable for Monday night. Jalen Carter has already been ruled out with shoulder issues. Jahan Dotson, which is their number 3 wide receiver, he was limited with a toe injury. Marcus Epps, he practiced full with the shoulder. Xavier Gipson, he was limited with the shoulder. Tackle Miles Hinton, he practiced full with the back injury. Lane Johnson, if Lane Johnson's out, that's also big for that Chargers defensive line. He did not practice with a foot injury. I think Lane Johnson, though, is out. Let's see. He's not fully ruled out yet, but he did not practice, so that'd be big for that Chargers defensive front to not have Lane Johnson play for the Eagles. And then Jalen Phillips, he's dealing with a concussion. He was limited. Like I said, he was acquired from the Dolphins. He's been a force on that defensive line coming over, so it'll also be another key player out for the Eagles if he can't go on Monday night. Monday night's matchup, the beginning of the year, I had the Chargers losing this game. Let's see what I had my final score as. I had them losing 27-20 at home. I'm not convinced that the Chargers are going to lose, but I'm also not convinced they're going to win. I think it's going to come down to the wire in this game. Like I said, Vegas and the odds have it 1.5 to 2.5 points. I think it depends on the health of Herbert. My hope is that the momentum from Sunday's game rolls into Monday night. They've played well this year on primetime. I think defensively, the Chargers had the advantage. If that offensive line can play at a higher level that they played at last week against the Raiders, I think they can get things going on offensive side of the ball and really run the ball and be dominant like they were last week against the Raiders. And also, we saw how many rushing yards Eagles can give up defensively. So I hate picking against the Chargers. I'm going to stick with my predictions right now that the Chargers do lose, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as close. And I'm not going to be surprised if the Chargers win. Just seeing how the Eagles have bounced back from losing back-to-back games, they have come up with a win. I want to pick the Chargers to win. I'm just not 100% confident, especially with Herbert and what condition he's in. But regardless, I think it's going to be a very tough game on Monday night, and the Chargers definitely can come out with the win if they execute at the level they did against the Raiders. And on the topic of playoffs, let's pull up right now playoff percentages. All right, this is on NFL.com. The Chargers sit the 5 seed right now. They're currently at 64% chance of making the playoffs. If they win, it goes up to 77%. If they lose, they drop to 52. And then just to look around the league right now, Buffalo plays Cincinnati. Cincinnati has to go to Buffalo. Buffalo's favored to win right now. The spread's at 5.5. And then the Colts right now, since they're the other wild card team, they play Jacksonville. So that is going to be a very interesting game. Be another battle for first in the AFC South. And just to take a look at our old friend, the Chiefs, not really old friend, just take a look at the Chiefs. They're sitting at 34% chance of making the playoffs. If they lose, they play Houston this week. That's going to be a very, very good game. That Houston defense is playing phenomenal. If they lose, it goes to 12%. If they win, it's at 48%. So still very tight. Let's take a look at the Eagles real quick. Eagles are the 3 seed in the NFC. They're currently at 96% chance of making the playoffs. If they lose, it drops to 93% chance. If they win, they're at 99%. So the Eagles are in a very good spot regardless to make the playoffs. But like I said, the Chargers can take care of business and own their destiny. Win Monday night, then you got to prepare for the Chiefs Sunday. This last stretch of the season is a gauntlet, and I'm glad the bye was later on in the season to really prepare. But you got to look at it as one game at a time for the Chargers. So take care of business Monday night, then we can worry about the Chiefs rolling into the following week. So with that being said, if you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe to Electric Edge Podcast on YouTube. You can also listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also follow me on socials at Electric Edge Pod. And I want to hear from you. Let me know your predictions for Monday night's game against the Eagles, what you think the score predictions are going to be. My bolt blast for this game is I think the Chargers will have 3 sacks on Hurts. And I also think that Chargers defense is going to get a pick on Hurts. He's only thrown 2 picks this year. I think the Chargers may force another pick on him as well. So I'm going with 3 sacks and a pick on Hurts Monday night. Let me know your predictions for Monday night's game in the comments. As always, I love to read comments from Charger fans. Let me know your thoughts. And let's hope that Monday night we could take care of business and get another win at SoFi. Also, for next week, be on the lookout for that vlog against the Eagles. If you haven't already, watch my vlog for Sunday's game against the Raiders. And then probably Tuesday or Wednesday next week, most likely Tuesday, I will have my post-game recap of this game. So thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you all for watching the show and subscribing. It means a lot to me. Go Chargers and bolt up.